Okay, cool. We started 5 minutes late, but that's okay because it's fashionable. Anyways, what month is it? It's like the very end of September, so we caught it. It is the Linea September community call. Woohoo! Yay! What are we doing today? We're introducing myself first. I'm Emily. I do DevRel for Linea, but really all that means is highlighting the really smart developers, and people who work on Linea. So with that aside, we can just go ahead and get launched. Guys, please introduce yourself. We'll start with Matt, and then I'll pass it off to Pedro.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Nelson. I'm based in New York, and I work at Consensus. I'm a product manager for Hyperledger Besu, which we will get into some of the fine specifics of it today. And some of you may already know what Besu is, but yeah, I'll save that my big explanation for the presentation.
Hello, I'm Pedro. I'm based in London. I work at Consensus since 2 years and a half, and I'm an engineer at Linea, and I started my work in the rollups actually when I joined Consensus. And yeah, that's me.
Very cool. So I guess to kind of give the lay of the land before we just jump into a presentation, today I brought on these two guys basically to talk a little bit about, how Linea integrates into the wider Consensus ecosystem. Right? I think one of our value props is that we are part of the Consensus kind of story. Besu is one of our, I guess, projects within Consensus, and that relationship has facilitated a lot of really cool things on the tech side that I don't want to articulate because we have subject matter experts at hand here who can do it much better than I can. So I'm not sure who's going to start off with sharing their screen, but I guess Matt, you nodded, so I'm assuming it's you or somebody.
I would rather have Pedro do so, but
Okay, cool.
I only have the one slide.
No worries.
I can do it. No worries. Let me check how I do this. Share screen. Should be this one. So there we go.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I guess to kind of frame the conversation, let's start with the basics. We can amplify. You got to satisfy the wide community of I have no idea what I'm doing to wow, I know everything already. So that's the challenge for you guys today. Yeah, go ahead, take it away.
So the agenda is going to be basically we are going to talk what is Besu, which Matt will help here. Then we'll further we'll go with a little overview of what is Linea and what are the extra requirements compared to a normal EVM, why we choose Besu, and what it's the role of Besu on Linea and how is Besu powering Linea, and then a little bit of the feature and how Besu fits into the feature. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, cool. You want to hit to the next slide?
Yeah.
So what is Besu? So for those that don't know, I'll give you the kind of boilerplate answer, and then I'll dive into kind of what we really talk about when we think of an Ethereum client. So Besu is an Ethereum client. It's open source. It's developed with Java. It can be used on Ethereum public networks, Ethereum private networks, permission networks, Ethereum-like networks. We include a bunch of different consensus algorithms. So, proof of stake that you know and love from Ethereum mainnet, proof of work for networks like Ethereum Classic, and then some other ones like proof of authority, which are useful for private networks, right? So really, Besu was initially designed as an Ethereum client that can work with a lot of different use cases. But in reality, it's just a set of components that enable things like Ethereum execution. And when we say Ethereum execution, think very basic. Transactions, they come into the network, they get executed, they're put on the chain, we go on, right? But you need a lot of different components to make that happen. So Besu is one implementation of these kinds of components, the Ethereum specification. So when you look at that little chart right there, we have about 5 main Ethereum execution clients. Geth, which you've definitely heard of, Nethermind, Besu, and Aragon. So, we're very proud that Besu makes up, a big chunk of the network there. But again, it's really around these sets of different components. In this case, written in Java, maintained by an open source team of contributors across the globe, not just at Consensus. This is a small plug if you were a Java dev to come work on Besu. We're always looking for new maintainers and contributors. But yeah, again, 10,000 foot view, right? Think of kind of Ethereum as the internet, and think of Besu as that kind of web browser. It's a client that lets you connect to the network and do things at a really low level. It's not quite at that wallet software level, but it's a little lower than that. The super basics, again, set of components that enable Ethereum execution, like the EVM. So Pedro's going to get into all of the different components that we've built kind of on top of Besu to enable Linea Ethereum execution. But think of it as things like the peer-to-peer networking, the kind of the blockchain itself, so chain data, world state data, the memory pool that takes all the transactions in and executes them, all these little components that we've strung together. And in this case, what Besu's enabled is plugins. So at the same time, we also have a plugin system, which we're using to do things previously like permissioning, privacy, other kind of use cases on Ethereum. But in this case, for Linea, is enabling some really cool features that we'll get into later. But that's kind of the high level view. It's a minority execution client for Ethereum and layer 2s. It's an open source project with a lot of cool folks working on it across the globe, not just at Consensus. And as I mentioned, we're always looking for people to get involved. Yeah, I'll save the fun stuff for later in the slides, and feel free to pepper us with questions as we go along.
Cool, thank you very much. So I'll start giving a slightly overview of Linea, what Linea is as a zkVM, and what further requirements this comes or requires out of that. So as you are already aware, Linea is a type 2 zkVM. And what does that mean is like the environment basically feels to a developer like a regular Ethereum. You can use all your tooling and everything out of the box with Solidity, and everything that you are used to it is the same thing. But there are a few caveats, and one of the main ones to be a type 2 EVM is like the state representation is slightly different in order to be proven. If we want it to be a type 1 EVM, we'll need to have the same state representation, and this would be really, really expensive and hard to prove. And to the best of my knowledge, there is not such a project yet. So we are aiming for the best possible thing, which is like being a type 2 EVM. And so what does this mean, like from execution to runtime and verifying a proof? So we have a bunch of transactions that they come in, they land into the EVM, we execute them. As an output of that, there is a state transition, and we generate what we call execution traces. So this has to do with the way we fragment the EVM. Then we do traces aggregation, which is like we aggregate multiple blocks or the traces of multiple blocks in a single one. There is a trace expansion process, which basically hashing or convert these to arithmetic traces. Then they go into the prover. The prover generates a proof, and is verified by the smart contract on the main one when the state is actually finalized. Although in a chronological order, things follow this flow from left to right, the requirements are sort of driven right to left. And what I mean by this is like being the prover. The prover has a given capacity. It can prove up to a given capacity of traces or transactions. So then we fall back all the way into, we need to arithmetize and break down the EVM into multiple submodules and make arithmetization that, which I'll show a diagram later, and also have a different state representation that will feed in the prover and to generate the proof. And so Besu is going to help us like in this first part of the pipeline, which is it's going to be the execution client with EVM creating blocks and executing the transactions, doing the transaction, the traces aggregation, And also the Besu team develops one component which is called ShowMay, which is where the type 2 state representation lands in. So small overview of extra requirements that are inherent to ZK VMs is like the prover constraints and the limitations that implies. The EVM execution traces that need to be generated in order to be proven. We are aiming at this stage to have 100% coverage of the EVM arithmetization, or proving 100% of the opcodes. The transaction pool needs to have some extra validation rules. We cannot create blocks that are bigger than the prover capacity. They also cannot exceed the L1 data limit because we need to post this to L1 for data availability purpose. It's going to increase or be better in the future with the IP 4844. Gas limits, and also, as I mentioned, the type 2 EVM thing, state representation, which is easier to prove, is which what we call a ZK-friendly state representation. So why did we choose Besu? As Matt was mentioning, one of the key features that Besu provides is that Besu was designed to be extended and versatile as an execution client. And for that, they developed a plugin system that allows to extend the functionality of the execution client in areas like the backend storage, the state rise, the EVM execution itself, the transaction pool, and they are also at the moment working, correct me if I'm wrong, to also enhance this in the consensus area of the execution client. Also on top of this, Besu, I think, has a unique state representation, which they support bonsai tries. And this has apparently very good near head performance, and also has lower storage requirements and state growth over time, which is appealing for the network like Linea and for operation costs. Also, Besu is open source, is used on mainnet. Like Emily was saying, is part of the consensus family of tools and developments, and is used by consensus staking. Consensus is very strongly committed to enable and empower the Ethereum community and ecosystem. We have an R&D team that actively works on EIPs and improving the Ethereum specification. We were heavily involved also in the delivery of the merge. We have Besu core developers are part of consensus. So this allows Linea to leverage the expertise that we have of a team of developing execution clients. At the end of the day, Linea is going to be an execution environment as well, which offers faster and quality development of new improvements for Linea, which is quite important. One of them was like the development of the type 2 state representation. It was a big thing that for us. Support on operation and troubleshooting, because they know the client back inside out, and this will allow us to have quick responses for issues and provide better user experience and uptimes for the users. And last but not the least, all the requirements or that Linea drives into the Besu, if they can be onboarded, or features that can benefit the whole community, we make it public available, and the whole community benefits from this. It's not just Linea. So how does Besu fit within Linea? So this is I'm going to give you zoom out overview of the Linea architecture, simplified, just focus on the Besu components. So nowadays, users access Linea through the Infura with the Linea, with the proxy to the network. We have the Linea cluster. So we have a bunch of archive nodes, Besu and Get at the moment. Those are the ones responsible to handling the requests. Then there is a peer-to-peer network that you are all familiar to propagate the transactions. We have the sequencer, which is Besu, that creates a blocks every 12 seconds. So until here is just standard Ethereum stuff, basically. Then we have two extra components that play a crucial role that are driven by the zkVM stuff. One is what we call the traces generators, and another one is a state manager. So the traces generator is responsible for every time when imports a new block, goes and generates the traces for all that block. And the state manager generates a different state representation. The sequencer also is aware when it is sequencing blocks of those traces counters, or because the prover is gonna say, oh, I can prove up to these limits. And the sequencer needs to make sure that it doesn't sequence or creates a block with transactions that go over those limits. And the coordinator is a component that I work mostly. Basically coordinates all of these, like checks whenever a new block is created by the sequencer, grabs the traces counters, checks how many blocks can be proven together, is aware of the prover capacity. So let's say, oh, we can aggregate 10 blocks in one proof. Asks for all those traces to be conflated in zkBesu. Asks the state manager what is a Merkle proof state transition between the first block and the last block, aggregates that all that information, asks the prover to prove that. Once the prover is done, asks Web3 signer to sign that transaction and posts it to L1. By the way, Web3 signer is another product which is open source and developed by Consensus, and is also use it on Linea. There are other projects outside there that use it, and it's a really cool thing to manage your keys. So in order to achieve this, we developed a bunch of plugins. There is this Linea plugin, which is coordinates functions inside Besu, the standard Besu, and this plays two crucial roles, as I was describing, in the sequencer. So the sequencer needs to be aware when it's going to execute sort of generating meta traces, count what are the limits, how far it goes, and seal a block as long as one of those limits is reached. And also on the traces generators to actually generate and conflate the actual traces. Then there is the Shomei component, which has a different state representation, and Kikori, which is, Matt, can you help me here? What does this one do exactly?
Yeah, this is just a fun name for the trilog shipping. So this is the ability for us to capture changes in the state trie and move them to the Shomei component so that we can have a representation of state in the way that is, like Pedro mentioned, very cheap and useful for the prover, but also a representation of state that is useful for developers that's more similar to Ethereum mainnet so that they can use the same RPC calls, the same tools, the same code even, to work with Linea state. So we have both, and this Kikori and Shomei combination allows us to keep them in sync with each other and to make sure that we have the right representation of state in the state management component.
Cool, thank you. So if I understood correctly, Kikori is the plugin that sits within Besu and ships it to the
yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Shomei.
So Besu is the Linea sequencer and is responsible, as I mentioned before, to ensure that blocks are within the prover capacity. This requires a granular execution trace counting, and is perhaps one of the places that we want to avoid bugs the most, because if we create blocks that go over this capacity, we are in trouble to prove it. There is also extra transaction inclusion rules that needed to be developed, which is, for instance, we don't do transfers to precompiled addresses, extra call data limits, so a transaction cannot have as much call data as a L1 transaction, slightly lower. The block does not exceed the L1 data, so the whole aggregated data in the block doesn't exceed L1. We have a dynamic gas price mechanism, which is basically we pull the gas price from L1, we make it 15 times cheaper, and we update that gas price on L2. This is also a custom development that we had for Linea, and Besu team helps on this. And so this allows us to achieve cheaper gas prices. And also we have a mechanism to aromatize spikes, which offers better user experience. And in the future, we are working to bring the sequencer as fast as possible so we can handle over 100 transactions per second, and also have faster block times to have faster confirmation times. Then we have the execution traces generator. So basically, as the EVM is broken down into several modules, and it generates traces for every model, what is happening in every module inside of the EVM. This is not exactly my area of expertise, so I'm a little bit out of depth here. But basically, the idea is like whenever a transaction is going to be executed, there's several opcodes and generate traces for that opcodes for the storage and everything. And the execution traces that in Besu is responsible for doing this. Support traces conflation, which is the aggregation of traces of multiple blocks. So this allows us to reach more cost-efficient proving, which is because we have a prover that has a given capacity, and we take as much as possible usage of that capacity. And also is more cost-effective to prove on L1 because of the cost of verifying the proof is the same. So as much as we can put in the proof, the better. And we are working and extending Besu APIs to allow us to implement 100% coverage of the EVM opcodes. And the Besu team is working closely with our R&D team to achieve this, hopefully very soon. So we have, like, as we mentioned, the state manager Shomei, which we call it Shomei. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Cool. So basically, what we have, like, we have a standard Besu, which relies on Bonsai tries with or Patricia Merkle tries, and we have like the try log shipping plugin, which is Kikori, and ships the logs and the changes or the deltas to Shomei, and Shomei converts these in a different state representation so that then it can be further proven. And these the state representation relies on sparse Merkle trees, MIMC hash function, which is a ZK-friendly hashing function. Cache is really expensive to prove. And also provides the L2 Merkle proof to be verified on L1. So there are protocols that need this, this proof, although it is a different state representation, it needs it to verify and against L1. And it provides an extra endpoint, which we call it rollup get proof, which is similar to the ETH proof. And then we, last but not least, we have like a bunch of Besu RPC nodes, or what we call the front-end nodes, which are the nodes that actually handle all the requests from the users. And again, they are responsible to do all the initial validation on the transaction. So there are custom rules on the transaction pool. They are at the moment running as archive nodes, but we are looking forward to, in the future, having a bunch of near-head instances using Bonsai for better performance and lower the operational costs. And it is responsible for providing some extra debugging and tracing APIs endpoints, such as debug trace call, trace block, and trace raw transaction. I think these are the top 3 most used at the moment. And these are required and used by some third-party indexing services. And we are also working on performance improvements at the moment. And hopefully, I'm forgetting something, which is also we have some tweaks to the way we provide the gas price and ETH history. So in order that the users and all the tooling that people have nowadays, they work in a seamless way and while making transaction fees cheaper. So about a little bit about the future. As is public stated, Linea is striving towards decentralization, and Consensus is having an active role on that by providing resources with the R&D team to achieve this. It's not an easy problem to solve, but we are working towards this. We aim to achieve sequencer decentralization, prover decentralization, and the Besu team is going to help us achieving that vision. As they said, they have expertise on the execution client, and Besu supports multiple consensus mechanisms, and perhaps we'll need to implement a new one or tweak an existing one. And also, we are looking, as Emily said, we have multiple things inside consensus, and one of them is Teco, which is one of the one popular consensus client, and we are looking to leverage this also in the future for decentralization. And I guess I covered it all. So that's me.
Awesome. Okay, cool. I have lots of stupid questions to ask, so bear with me. Okay, so let me try to recap what I understood, and then you guys correct me where I'm wrong and add color. Okay, so Besu is an Ethereum client. It's a minority client, but actually captures a pretty large percentage, just in general. Besu differentiates itself primarily on its plugin system. Is there other ways like Besu is like why Besu versus Geth versus Nethermind?
Yeah, absolutely. So we differentiate ourselves, I think, to developers as far as the plugins are concerned, but for like users on mainnet is for validating nodes, running proof of stake nodes, or running nodes at home. I think our biggest feature is Bonsai. As Pedro mentioned, it keeps the overall storage requirements very low, and in many cases lower than Geth and Nethermind and the other clients. So that's kind of our big selling point, right? Is we want to keep storage requirements very low and near head performance very fast, both of which are very important for validating nodes. So I would say that's our kind of big feature for mainnet folks, and our biggest feature for developers and for others is definitely the extensibility of the client via plugins and via some other mechanisms in Besu.
Cool. And then you guys keep mentioning near head instances. I don't actually have any idea what that is.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that's kind of on me. So when we have, the blockchain, there's very old historical data, and there's the head of the chain, or some folks call it the tip of the chain. Both are correct. So when we say things are near head, it means maybe the last 128 blocks, or the last 256 blocks, or the last 512 blocks. There's different definitions, whatever. The point being is that at least in Besu, we've tuned the Bonsai format to be performant in this area, because in many cases, that's all the user really cares about. To do stuff in proof of stake, you really only need data from the most recent changes to the blockchain in order to process new blocks and to process new transactions. So we don't really care about all this old data, and we can essentially make it harder to access in a way that makes it cheaper to store, if that makes sense. So that's what we mean by near head in this case.
Okay, cool. And then I guess tail end of that, does that mean with like EIP 4844 coming up, that's going to be something that's heavy on like Linea and Bezu's kind of interactions with each other? Or where does that fit into how we address the new changes?
Yeah. So the good part about 4844 is that it actually it won't impact too much of how the networks themselves operate. It's really a means for us to make data cheaper to store on Ethereum. As Pedro mentioned, Linea does a lot of work to compress and reduce the amount of data that it needs to store on Ethereum itself, the layer one. Because that's how we get all of the security guarantees of Ethereum, is by taking the data from the rollup on L2, in this case Linea, and posting it on Ethereum layer one. So 4844 is being implemented in Besu, of course, but only really for those nodes that are running on the layer one. So if you're running an Ethereum node using Besu, you're running the software that has 4844 and that makes all the magic happen for Linea as an L2. Linea and their instances will be updating their smart contracts and their software to take advantage of these blobs, but not really directly in Besu, if that makes sense, because the data may end up anywhere on L1, whether it's Geth node or a Besu node or a different type of node. That's the kind of the beauty of it. It's just a means for us to store data more cheaply, regardless of where it ends up. And Linea can take advantage of that on their side. And then on layer one, we've updated our clients to make sure that we can support this type of data.
Okay, cool. And then there was a slide, Pedro, you had of like the EVM to traces to trace expansion to blah, blah, blah. This is really basic question. I got a little confused. Is like the transactions going to the EVM, that's the Linea ZK EVM? Or is that the Ethereum EVM? Because it was just EVM.
So that's a good question. Is the Ethereum EVM? So that's what makes it that is the same Ethereum EVM, executed the same way, your code. But basically, we have API hooks that we know what is happening inside the EVM, and we generate metadata, what we call traces, what is happening while that transaction is going to be executed. What modules of the EVM are going to be touched? What is the state between before and executing this opcode and these kind of things? So we don't change the behavior of the EVM, it behaves the same thing. Basically, we just have a magnifier looking into it and take notes of what's happening, so that we can correctly prove that execution. If that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, so Declan, our product manager, often says stuff like Linea is the only rollup that directly arithmetizes the EVM. Is this what he was talking about?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess maybe the implication for other rollups is that they will probably do some simulation of the EVM instead of like us who directly magnifies the Ethereum virtual machine. Mm.
Again, that's a bit of out of my depth, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, no
But
worries.
yeah.
I'll go bother Declan after this. What else did I want to say? Okay, so I'm trying to get a grasp of like how Besu affects Linea performance, right?
Yeah.
That's a broad question.
I can give the short version, and maybe Pedro can expand. So in many cases, like Pedro said, Besu is being used to do things like build blocks, to sequence transactions, to collect those transactions from users, and kind of to store the state data and transitions. We don't care about that as much. So doing all of those things is reliant on how Besu performs in general, right? So how quickly can Besu collect all the transactions in the pool, check them for validity, build a block, share that block, put the block on the rollup, and then have the rollup place set on L1, right? So all of the components that are based around kind of block building and the world state and all of some of these kind of little bits and pieces, those are really reliant on Besu's performance to be good. And that's why we've chosen to use bonsai tries. In many cases, we've chosen to tweak some of the performance and work with the Linea team directly to identify where we can improve this process. But there's areas where we don't impact the performance, for example, like the ZK EVM itself, right? So we pass off all of those transactions to be executed elsewhere. And the arithmetization and all that fun stuff that I'm sure you've talked about on previous calls, we do not operate within those pieces because Besu is, again, serving here as really a coordinating function for all of the really nitty-gritty research bits of the ZK EVM. We just do all the normal Ethereum-like stuff, which is, again, building blocks, sequencing transactions, collecting MET transactions into the mempool, gossiping those transactions around to other nodes, and making sure the network is coordinated and in sync. And then we delegate all the other stuff to the really high-tech components that Pedro and Nicholas's team have created over there.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. No, that definitely makes sense for sure. That helps a lot. I had another question, but I guess we're already at the 40-minute mark, and I did want to leave some time for our other guests here. So when I can remember it, I'll probably bug
Just a
you
heads
guys.
up, for instance, speaking about performance, one thing that we are actively working, like we want to have higher throughput of transactions and lower block times. So this will imply that we'll need to invest on better performance to achieve that shorter block time, for instance. And we are actively working on that. And this is something that is not just going to benefit Linea, it's going to benefit the whole community. Because when you spin up a Besu and you want to sync with the network, the faster it executes a block, the faster it's going to be to sync with the network, for instance.
Very cool. Yes. Linea equals Ethereum alignment.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have for you guys. I want to bring on our winners from ETH Global, but thank you so much for joining. That brought a lot of clarity. I feel like, especially because I'm like, oh, the Besu team exists. They're doing something. I don't know. But now I know. So again,
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for
um,
having us.
yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, cool. So I have
Hi.
two guests here today. It's Nico and Raffle. Thank you so much for waiting. I told you 20 minutes and then I got nerd sniped. Um, yeah, so let's start from the beginning. Why are you guys here? For those of you who don't know, EthGlobal NYC, so that's a hackathon happened, was it this past weekend? I feel like it's been ages, which is crazy. But there's always a lot of really cool builders. We have some cash prizes as well. But when you guys presented, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. You did like kind of the I'll let you guys introduce your what you worked on actually first, before I start gushing. But start off with introductions. Introduce
Yeah.
yourselves.
Yeah, so my name is Rafael. I'm from Paris and I'm the founder of Digital Asset Solutions. So we are a small venture studio who just keep building little products in 3 years. And I'm mainly a developer in Web3 since 7 years.
Okay, so I'm Nicolas. I'm from Paris too, and I'm working with Rothal for more than 1 year now, and I'm a full stack developer.
Awesome. So, give the lay of the land, I guess, for the rest of the call. I kind of wanted to talk about you guys' experience coming to Eth Global because are you guys both in Paris right now? Did you fly all the way over to
Yeah,
the States
Yeah.
just for New York? That's insane. Wow. I guess you probably came from mainnet too, then. Maybe.
We won the last hackathon, like the Global Paris, so they pay us a bit like for the flight. So we are not as
Oh.
crazy as you think, but yeah.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, so like I wanted to kind of pick your brains on, winning strategies or how you guys are so successful. But then also lead into your experience outside of the hackathon, being like, I don't want to say real builders, but building past the hackathon, getting involved in like what you guys are doing, kind of celebrate how awesome you are. So I guess to first start off, what's your secret sauce? How do you guys do it? Where does the ideation part come in? How do you structure your workflows? Um,
I think definitely we spent some time on the idea. I think we are already into this field, so we try to already build a good product, a good startup since like 3 years. So we know which idea are bad and which are good. But mainly we try to focus on the what is trending in the market right now, and like the big thing right now is the friend tech. And it has created a lot of like new social product into Web3. And so we've tried to first like focus on this. Like we wanted to build something social, and we just try to like pitch any ideas and destroy the idea of each other. And once we had an idea that make a sort of consensus into the team, we try to like make the best like game theory, make the best focus on the best part of the MVP. So it's not like too much, to present, even though like our product is really, really big right now. But yeah, we try to focus on like the most important part. And yeah, I think that's it. Nico, do you have something to add?
no, you pretty say everything. I think the most important part is to like really think larger at the beginning and say whatever you want to say because maybe someone in the team can have something to say on it, and this is how we have every ideas. We listen everyone,
Yeah.
and that's it.
awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I actually did want to ask you if you guys could showcase what you guys built before we.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go. Can you show the slides, Nico,
Yeah.
maybe? So we've built a product named ZeroFi. So the goal is to have like the first DeFi protocol where you don't need money to have more money. You don't need any collateral. It's like zero collateral, and you can have some loans based on your social reputation. So we use some game theory and the social part of Lens to build it. Yeah. So first, like we are a big fan of what Vitalik is saying, and we already built some product around his vision, and this one also tried to use his vision. So he say that one of the most important resources right now is legitimacy, and we want to build something around it. You can. So our goal was to like create a sort of social graph. So it's hard to understand, but as long as we will pass the demo, you will understand it better. So the first concept is the credit line. So the credit line is just basically a credit score, and it's two things in our product. So the first is a sort of initial score. So it's calculated based on the TVL of your follower. So how much money your follower have right now, and also some metrics about you, like what did you have done in the chain, how many gas did you spend. We try to limit bots by using some civil proof um, protocols like WorldCoin or Gitcoin Passport. So we limit the number of people that can like just try to rig a game. You can go next. And the second thing is the continuous action. So we want to have a protocol where you can improve your score, and it's based on the network. So basically I can say Nicola is someone who is trustable and he can take a loan from the protocol. So if I say it, I'm gonna put my credit score at risk, and Nicola will have a better credit score and he can lend way more money. So the goal is to create sort of this social graph, this social network where everyone can approve each other or distrust each other, and it will create a sort of social trust layer. And some people will just get the money and get out of the system, but at the end, there will be just some people who will stay in the system and they will just have access to a big credit line. And behind this, we try to think about like the game theory, how we can like, of course, there is some like airdrop is like one of the biggest like game system, I think. So we need to like limit this peoples who just try to game the system. So we try to apply some game theory into the APR of the rate. So the more default is on the system, the more loan will be costly. So everyone will have to pay more if a lot of people are defaulting. And we will have different pools based on who are you. Like if you have a lot of followers and you have a lot of on-chain footprint, you will have access to better rates. And if you're new to the blockchain and you don't have a lot of followers, you will not have the best rate and the best credit lines. And the goal of it is at the end to create a sort of a sort of protocol where everyone can just like trust each other and be accountable of each other actions. So if Nicola is not reimbursing his credit, it's gonna affect my credit score and I don't want it. So I'm gonna call him and say, hey, yo, you have to reimburse the credit because it's gonna affect mine. And at the end, this social network will like have a sort of like base of some people who just trust each other, and the rate will go lower as more people will just exit the game. They're just gonna like take the money and exit, and at the end you will just have a lot of like trust in this network. And you can go to the demo. So what we have built is based on. Do you have any question, Emily?
No, I mean, right now
No?
yes,
All
keep
right.
going.
All right. So we've built two things into the protocol. So the first one is the social layer, and the second is the DeFi app. So on the DeFi app, here Nicola is connected, and we automatically compute his credit score. So the credit score is based on two things: how much his follower have in money, and also what is his historical gas usage. So if he doesn't make a lot of on-chain transaction, he will not have a lot of credit score. And here he will try to like borrow some money. And as you can see, he tried to borrow more than his credit score. So we will offer him instant liquidity based on the pool. So the pool will give him 36 USDC. So we had deployed all this contract, of course, on Linea. And the second part is the social part. So you can also ask your follower and say, hey guys, I need some money, and you can borrow me, lend me some money here. And he's gonna create this request. So this is the two things. Here you have the history, so the active loan, and also all the pools. So if I'm a DeFi user and I want a good like protocol where I can invest my money, it can be really interesting like to invest here on my followers. Like I like some people, like I trust them, like ZachXBT. If he wants some money, he could definitely come here and he will have a big credit line. And you can have a good APR because it's based on the default rate. So we just double it or triple it, and you get this premium if you're a lender. On the profile, we have the history. So two things: the loan that he take from the pool, and also his request. So here is the request that you can post it. So if he click on it, it will post it on Lens. And you have also trusted by, you have also all the people that trust him. So here Nicola has been trusted by two people. These people have put their credit score into risk. And Nicola can do the same, so he can trust Milestone. So he gonna trust him and say, I'm gonna put my credit score at risk and trust you. And once he's done, as you can see here, his credit score is 24, and Nicola will give 10% of his credit score. So now it's 25. And the last part is the social part. So we can connect on Lens and see all the posts of any people. So you can imagine like your feed with all your favorite influencer who approve some people or lend some money or borrow some money, and you can help them. You can do whatever you want on this social part. Every action are posted on Lens, and you have this sort of social part of this lending and borrowing app on this side. And that's basically it.
Yeah. No, I saw this and I was like, "Oh, this is very cool." I think especially from the Linea side, we're exploring a lot of projects about, like, identity and, like, legitimacy, as you mentioned. I lost the thread in our Telegram chat 'cause we talked separately. Are you guys working on this still, or are you what is your, like? Because you also have
Yeah,
you said a venture studio, right? So I'm sure there's a lot of projects going on.
yeah. So right now we are still working on this. So we had just launched a landing page where you can like right now access on it, join the product. We had put like the explanation of all the products. So if you can, of course, like make a little advertisement for it, we are we would be really happy. But yeah, right now we just want to see if there is some traction on it, if the market will be interested, if some lenders will lend. I would definitely lend some money on it. And also if this need from big influencer is there if they need to borrow some money sometime. And if that's the case, we would definitely want to launch it. We saw a lot of product right now on SocialFi, like some people are building like friend tech where you can borrow and lend money and use the friend tech share as collateral.
Mm.
So we see there is a lot of right now things that's going on the market, and we think that it's a good product, especially the fact that Lens has given us the best price. We think that's a good sign. Like,
Yeah. No, I did
yeah,
hear some buzz just like generically around. So I think there's lots of positive indicators here. I think someone was asking, do you see like envision picking like actual credit scores? What does this say? How can you calculate crypto credit
yeah.
score from collateral or use like third parties?
No, so basically we use two things. We use right now the credit score is computed in our backend. So we have server that's gonna just watch all your follower on Lens, and we're gonna watch how much money do they have. So the end goal is to watch all the interaction that you have on this protocol and all the people that interact with you. So if Vitalik liked your post, it's gonna give you a lot of credit score. But if you just like have a lot of followers and they don't have a lot of money, uh, it's gonna do nothing on ZeroFi. You will not have a lot of credit score. So this is the first part, and we want to limit it by saying you have to be active on chain. So the more gas you're gonna use on chain, the more credit score you can have. If you have no gas usage, it's complicated for us to give you some loans.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious what other projects you guys actually are working on currently too.
Yeah,
If you wanted to introduce anything, I want to
yeah,
give you
of
the stage.
course. So the venture studio is a digital asset solution. So we've built it 3 years ago, and we had built like 6 or 7 projects since then. So the first right now and the most like ambitious is Guard. So Guard is basically a protocol where you can protect your crypto against anything. So you can protect it against hack, scam, thief. You can also protect it against a loss. And also if something happened to you, the inheritance process is handled by it. So it look like crazy, but it's really like easy. And um, the basic behind it, it's we're gonna create a social wallet. It's a social recovery wallet, and we're gonna watch every transaction that is happening on your wallet, every transaction, and we are gonna watch it in the mempool. So it's before it's approved. We are watching it on chain, and if we detect any malicious transaction, we're gonna take the money and put that into your guard, and you will be the only one or your family who can recover the crypto inside. So the goal is basically like I get I get recently hacked like 3 months ago.
Oh
Uh,
no.
yeah, I lost my main wallet, my hot wallet with like more than 10,000 transactions. It's really sad. I'm sad, but God could have protected. Like the private key has been stolen, and right now you have no solution to protect against private key stolen. You can have a safe, but it's a bit complicated for users. So users have already like have their MetaMask, have their Ledger. They don't want to just change their habit. And with Guard, you just come to the protocol. You just have to approve your cryptocurrency, and we are watching everything that has happened. And if we detect any malicious thing, anything that seems like a hack, a scam, or thief, we are protecting your wallet. And that's our most ambitious project. Um, why we are building this, it's also because we had done a lot of MEV in the past. We have done a lot of like, arbitrage, MEV, loan, market making, a lot of financial complicated things. But basically we are able to use Flashbot easily. and watch everything that is happening in the mempool and front run any transaction. So we had this whole infrastructure to do it. So that's our main project right now. We also worked before on some play to earn, but this is not the season to talk about it, so we are not gonna talk about it. Another project that the last hackathon we won is Send. Send is basically an aggregator of all your messaging app. So if you have XMTP, if you have dbank, if you have on-chain messaging, if you have like anything like Nansen, you have like more than 6 or 7 protocols right now that are building. XMTP, of course, is one of the best and my favorite, but some people are not using it right now and they prefer debunk or just like, you know, the Etherscan messaging. And our goal is basically to just like contact anyone on chain. I want to like contact somebody and by any mean. So if he have just like block scan or debunk, he will get my message. So that's just the goal of Send. And that's what we build. So the product is almost ready, but it's hard for us to exploit it more because we don't see how we can like monetize it, how we can earn money on this. And right now we are a bit struggling on this. So there is some traction on it, but we will be more focused on God and also on ZeroFi. We are really right now. This whole week we were thinking about how to develop more of the solution.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like money is always the, the limiting factor.
Especially right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? Oh, can you send me the links so I can post them in the chat for everything?
Yeah, of course.
I just sent on Telegram.
On Telegram? Okay,
Yeah.
let me see. Okay, cool. ZeroFi. And then, so if you want to sign up for the waitlist, it is available now. And then what was it? Digital Asset Solutions. Right.
Yeah.
And the last one is Guar if you want.
Yeah. So Guar, we can deploy Guar also on Linea. It's something that could definitely be done. It could be like multi-chain. But right now, ZeroFi, I think it's one of our focus. And yeah, if we have some traction and some people join us, we could definitely build something that could be better than Friendtech, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Friendtech scares me, honestly. People always ask me if I'm going to get on it. And I'm like, it feels like OnlyFans, and I'm not sure if I want to be in that realm of conversation. Yeah.
And it's really expensive. Like right now, some
it?
people are paying like $5,000 just to talk with somebody. It's so expensive.
Yeah. So I don't know. But anyways, we are over time right now, but this is actually really cool. I love to see like all the other projects that you guys are building on. And excited to see that you guys are launched. So sign up for ZeroFi, Z3RO.fi. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for joining. And I guess that's the end of our community call. So have a good weekend, guys.